Hey, how's it going? Um, Thor: The Lost Viking. Um, Now the other reviews of these books were mostly positive. This one is the first one that I can really say that I did not enjoy reading it. It's not that it was necessarily bad, but it's just not my cup of tea. Because reading Thor, especially like old Thor, like this, back with Walt Simonson doing art and writing, I feel like when it's like one person doing both writing and art duties, I feel like one gets compromised, and here it's probably the writing that gets compromised. But I don't know, a lot of other people seem to really enjoy Walt Simonson's run. It's just not for me. So we start off, and we're in like this forge area, and this guy is quite bulky, is like slamming his hammer down, like casting this weapon, and there's a sound that like echoes throughout the universe that just says doom. Meanwhile, we have Donald Blake, who's on Earth. Donald Blake, in the comic books at least, is the human persona of Thor. So in the films, it's just Thor on his own. Here we have Donald Blake, and he has like a walking cane. He stands on the ground and he becomes Thor. That's the comic book version, at least at this time it was. So Donald Blake's Donald Blake's walking around. He's like thinking about Asgard, about Earth, about how much he likes Earth, and then he gets taken into this car by Nick Fury and taken to a S.H.I.E.L.D. helicarrier, where he gets told that there's this thing, this star, this like ship in space that's like just basically replenished itself with a star. So Thor goes out there and he goes to fight whatever this thing is. Meanwhile in Asgard, Balder the Brave has just come back from the dead, and what he's seen in Helheim, he's not gonna be fighting anytime soon. He's sworn off everything. He's just eating his troubles away, and Sif and Volstagg are trying to like bolster him up, trying to basically make him, a valiant warrior again. Meanwhile, Thor encounters this ship that, starts attacking him, and inside the ship there is a creature that starts attacking him. Meanwhile, Thor's brother Loki is plotting again once more to take down Thor, and it involves this woman called Lorelei, who basically has the ability to entrance people into like falling in love with her or some stuff. Then we see that the creature that's attacking Thor is actually Beta Ray Bill. This like horse-faced, like bulky guy, and Thor and Beta Ray Bill fight each other, and Thor ends up reverting back into Donald Blake, and Beta Ray Bill picks up the cane, whacks it, and it turns into Mjolnir, and he's able to hold it. meaning that Beta Ray Bill is worthy enough to wield the hammer. He then gets sent by Odin, who notices a threat to Asgard, so Beta Ray Bill gets sent back to Asgard, leaving Donald Blake in the middle of nowhere, shouting father. Then go back to this forge. This guy's still banging away. Nick Fury tries to consolidate Donald Blake, who's like, what if Thor's not around anymore? What if he doesn't stay? What if he's gone forever and that guy has my hammer now? So Beta Ray Bill is on Asgard, and he sees like all the Asgardians surrounding him, and he sees them all as demons. Odin shows up and he's like, "Where's my son? And what have you done with Thor?" Then he like encapsulates Beta Ray Bill, and he's like, "Well, you're worthy to wield the hammer, which means you're not like evil, but so we're going to instead, when Thor does arrive, we're going to have you two fight for worth of Mjolnir." Meanwhile, Sif, who has feelings towards Thor, sees Lorelei snogging Thor in the woods, and this Thor isn't Thor, it's actually Loki, so that's the whole Sif thing is an ongoing plot, along with the Lorelei thing. And then get a bit of Beta Ray Bill's origin, so he's not actually, like, he used to be, like, humanoid, but then after, like, tests and a lot of, like, engineering, he turned into, like, the perfect warrior, but sacrificed his, like, humanity. So Thor and Beta Ray Bill fight again in like this in this area. Meanwhile on Asgard, someone from Vanaheim tries to attack and kill Balder. Volstagg then gets in the middle of it, takes this guy, sits on him, and he's like, "Let me tell you the tale of Balder the Brave." And Thor and Beta Ray Bill are still fighting. Thor looks to have the upper hand. Both Beta Ray Bill and Thor are knocked unconscious. Beta Ray Bill gets up first, and he's carrying the unconscious body of Thor back to Asgard. And he's like, "Yeah, the hammer is mine." But Beta Ray Bill can't take Mjolnir because he sees that only one person is worthy enough to wield Mjolnir, and that being Thor. But Thor sees himself as not being worthy because he was bested in combat by a worthy foe. So Odin goes to the trolls and he's like, "Build me a weapon." He's like, "Sure, but get your best female combatant to fight our champion. If she wins, we'll build you the weapon. If she loses, she'll be the slave of our champion forever." So Sif rides on to battle this champion. She wins easily. But meanwhile on Earth, there's a seeming earthquake in Canada, so it's a bit weird, and out of the ground comes Fafnir the dragon, and we'll get more on Fafnir later. But Sif wins against this troll champion, and the trolls are like, "Yeah, we'll build your weapon. We just wanted that guy out of the way. He's a bit of a dick." So they go to the forge where they start building this weapon, and Beta Ray Bill like reaches his hand into the molten hot like liquid, and he's like, and they're like, "This is your new hammer." we call it Stormbreaker. And yeah, and so Beta Ray Bill's like, I'd love to stay, thank you for the hammer, and thank you for treating me as one of your own, but my people are being attacked by demons, I need to save them. So Thor's like, I'll go with him. He was a worthy combatant. I won't have him fight alone. So they decide to go fight these demons on like a chariot, with like Tooth Gnasher and Tooth Grinder, in front of them, and Sif decides to join as well for some reason. So Beta Ray Bill and Thor are fighting off these demons, and Sif, and they're like, we need to find the source. So Sif stays behind to fight off the demons, and Beta Ray Bill's ship Scuttlebutt, he named the ship Scuttlebutt, and they fight off the demons. Meanwhile, Thor and Beta Ray Bill throw their hammers into the source of the demons, and they all dissipate. Meanwhile, Loki and Lorelei are like, right, we've got to infatuate Thor some way. We've got to make Thor fall in love with Lorelei, so that then it will mess with his mind, so that Loki can kill Thor. It's a weird subplot that's not really explored much in this book. So when Beta Ray Bill and Thor go back to Earth, they're both given enchantments on their weapons. So Thor will now never turn back into Donald Blake, because he wanted to get rid of Donald Blake at the start of the book anyway. And he feels like it's a part of him that doesn't really need to be there anymore. So he now won't revert back to Donald Blake. Meanwhile, Beta Ray Bill can revert now back to his normal humanoid form. So Beta Ray Bill, along with Sif, who has been like gaining like some infatuation towards Beta Ray Bill throughout the course of the book, they both decide to go back to Beta Ray Bill's people. Meanwhile, Thor goes back to Earth, which is being attacked by Fafnir the dragon, because of course it is. So Thor now doesn't have Donald Blake, so he doesn't have a human persona, so he has to create one for himself. Meanwhile, Lorelei goes to like talk to Fafnir the dragon, who, can't be infatuated by her like abilities. So instead he basically knocks her unconscious and ties her up in like a construction yard. And Thor goes to see Nick Fury, and he's like, can you give me an alternate persona? Can you get me an apartment and get me a human guise? And so Fury gets him a job, an apartment, and some fresh clothes. And Thor is like working at this construction site where Lorelei's been like tied up, and she's like dangling from a crane. Thor decides that his new name should be Sigurd Jarlson, because that's not like weird at all for a human to be called Sigurd or Sigurd Jarlson. So he runs in to save this woman who's like dangling from like a crane, and Fafnir attacks Thor, and he's like, I can't turn into Thor, otherwise these people will know who I am. and I can't like just leave the dragon because he'll kill these people. So Thor fights Fafnir in this construction yard, and Fafnir like flees. Meanwhile, on Asgard, Volstagg is trying to like buster up Balder. He's trying to like make him like want to be a worthy warrior again. But Balder's not having any of it, so he runs away from Asgard, and he goes to like an encampment that's quite near to Karnilla, who is like a woman who has an infatuation towards Balder. So Fafnir flees from this like battle, but all the while through this, since Thor's been back on Earth, he's been hearing this voice that's calling out to him like the Vikings would back in the Viking bygone era. So Thor decides to follow this voice, and it takes him to like a Viking settlement, where there's only one Viking remaining. Hence the name of the story, The Lost Viking, even though The Lost Viking is only the last 3 issues of the actual arc. But he sees this like Viking graveyard. He's like, so where's the owner of the town? So he enters this like temple that's like booby trapped. Meanwhile, Balder is approached by Karnilla, who basically is like, you need to get over this. It's like you can't be responsible for you can't save everyone. And as a warrior, you need to take costs. Like, it's just something that comes with the territory. And he's like, I haven't quite mastered that yet, even though he's like 1,000 years old. So we're having this like deep character study when this character is 1,000 years old, when you don't know who you are at 1,000 years old. you probably never. So Thor is like trying to dodge all these like booby traps, and at the end of the temple, he comes across this guy in like Viking garb, and meanwhile back in like New York, Fafnir is attacking this like seaside town, and Lorelei is like making this potion that's going to make Thor like do everything she wants for her, and when Thor like starts attacking this like garbed like figure, he takes off his helmet and he's like, damn, it's just an old man. And so Thor like takes this old man out of the cave, and the old man's like, I was a noble Viking and I want to go to Valhalla, so I thought that if I tricked a god to come and kill me, then I'd have my worthy death. So Thor's like, you can still have your worthy death if you come with me to fight this dragon that's in New York. So the two, after some deliberation, the two go to fight Fafnir. The dragon in New York. This Viking, Elif the Lost, who then becomes Elif the Dragon Slayer, he jams his spear into Fafnir's back. Thor then strikes the spear with his hammer, and this then ends up killing, or seemingly killing, Fafnir. It doesn't actually kill him, because he comes back. But Thor then Fafnir like collapses, but Elif dies, and Thor has like a Viking funeral for Elif, where he puts Fafnir in front of him as if it were a dog, because like back in the Viking era, like dogs were put at the Vikings' feet when they would burn the Viking's body. And the Elif is taken to Valhalla, and he gets his seat. And back at Thor's apartment, he's like brooding, and Lorelei comes to his apartment, and she's like, "It's hard to make friends around here, so let's get together." And they do. And basically the last thing is it's alluded to that they like have Boom Boom together, but who knows really, just to say what happened next. There's nothing wrong with Thor: The Last Viking. It's just not my cup of tea. A lot of people may have liked Walt Simonson's run, but it's just not for me, really. Again, there's nothing terribly bad in it. Sure, the actual Lost Viking arc wasn't until like the last 3 issues. But again, pacing in this is good. It's just the writing isn't really my cup of tea. There's a lot of these, thous, thou arts, and it's all very Shakespearean, and I'm not really a big fan of that. I prefer the Thor of like nowadays. But it's not a bad book. I'd probably give it like a 3 out of 10. Just because I have issues with it, but a lot of people seem to like Walt Simonson's Thor, and I'm just not one of those people. It's just not for me. So that's going to be it for this video. I'll see you guys in the next video. If you like this one, give it a like, give it a ding 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 ding. I don't know. And I'll see you dudes in the next video. Peace. Usual links will be in the description below, and all that good stuff. Peace again.